Travel Michigan. I'm Dave Lorenz along with Michelle Banache. And Michelle, we're heading way up north.
We're heading north to one of my favorite places, Paradise, and we're talking with Bruce Lynn, Operations Manager of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. And Bruce, you guys have a historical but also a emotional event coming up with the Edmund Fitzgerald Memorial Ceremony on November 10th.
That's correct, Michelle. The Edmund Fitzgerald, which a lot of people are very familiar with on the Great Lakes, did sink on November the 10th, and for a number of years we've hosted a memorial ceremony, and that's exactly what it is. It's a memorial ceremony for the 29 crew members that perished on the Fitzgerald, and we will be doing that again this coming November the 10th.
You know, why do you think that people are so kind of entranced by the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald?
You know, I think there's a number of reasons. I mean, one, this ship was really the pride of the American fleet. Gordon Lightfoot really had something to do with this as well. I think his song brought a lot of attention to this particular shipwreck. But I think there's a mystery to it, too. Really, nobody to this day knows why that ship sank and why it went down so quickly that there wasn't even time for a distress call coming from the crew and from the captain. So I think there's just a number of reasons, Dave, why people are really, attracted to this mystery.
Well, just in case there is somebody out there who's, never heard the song or the story, why don't you tell us a little bit about the story and kind of fill in the gaps there?
Sure. Yeah, the Edmund Fitzgerald, a 729-foot ore carrier, and really the pride of the Columbia Steamship Company. It was November 9th. Left the western end of Lake Superior, specifically Superior, Wisconsin, and was making its way due east and headed for the Sioux Locks and eventually going to Detroit. This ship and then another vessel, another comparable ship behind it, the Arthur M. Anderson, were making their way kind of along the north shore of Lake Superior to kind of get a little bit away from the storm that was building up and coming out of the northwest. The storm was pretty dramatic, to say the least. There were 90-mile-per-hour winds that were recorded at the Sioux Locks, 35-foot waves out on the big lake, out on Lake Superior, and so it was very dramatic. But again, this was really, for the most part, nothing that these ships hadn't been through before. They had plowed their way through a lot of major storms, so as far as the crew and the captain of the Fitzgerald or even the Arthur M. Anderson were concerned, and there were other ships out there that night, too, that they would just make their way through it. Well, long story short, as they were closing on Whitefish Bay and what would really be kind of a safe refuge, the Fitzgerald literally disappeared off of the radar screen of the Arthur M. Anderson. Captain Bernie Cooper was pretty concerned at that point. He was the captain of the Anderson. But like I said, long story short, the Fitzgerald, just 17 miles northwest of Whitefish Point, just simply disappeared.
Legend lives on from the Chippewa down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. Superior, they said, never gives up her dead when the gales of November come early.
Well, I think of shipwrecks as being something, especially Great Lakes shipwrecks, where, rescue personnel from the Coast Guard and from merchant marines out there, they could get to these, sinking ships rather quickly. It seems to me that maybe one of the reasons we're so interested in this is that we don't expect ships to sink anymore.
You're right, Dave. You're absolutely right. If you look at the ships that are operating in the Great Lakes today, there are 1,000-footers that are out there, and I think maybe there's that belief, maybe not so much from the sailors or the shipping companies, but there's a belief, I think, that, these ships are pretty much unsinkable, particularly in lakes. But those lakes, and if you watch them, I'm actually looking out over the lake from my office right now, the lakes, there's a huge amount of energy there that can cause a lot of destruction. We have 200 shipwrecks right around Whitefish Point alone, approximately, and we find new ones every year. But I think it's easy to underestimate. But the one thing I would say is it's not unusual to see a dozen ships waiting in Whitefish Bay when there are gale warnings and other things going on up on Lake Superior, out on the big lake. It's nothing to see a lot of ships waiting. So there is a respect. There is a respect for what happens out on Lake Superior.
Well, the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum there in Paradise, you offer so many great exhibits about ships that have been lost in the Great Lakes, and, of course, a big memorial there to the Edmund Fitzgerald. And this coming Saturday, the 10th, at 7 p.m., you'll have your annual ceremony to memorialize those 29 men who were lost on Lake Superior. What's going to happen there? Anything different or unique?
Well, sure, Dave. And for anybody who's been up to it before, or obviously for people who haven't, it is a very respectful ceremony. We do have family members, surviving family members from the Fitzgerald crew that are going to be with us this year. And there's a number of things that will happen. And it's not a very long ceremony, but we will have a speaker that will talk a little bit about the Fitzgerald itself, and that's something we typically do. We will ring the bell from the Edmund Fitzgerald, which is in our main museum gallery. That will ring 30 times. We'll have different individuals and family members that will come up and ring the bell 29 times for each crew member that was lost on the Fitzgerald, and then the 30th time for all sailors that were lost on the Great Lakes. But what we're going to do a little bit differently this year, and I've worked with some nice people at the Coast Guard, we are going to actually turn the lighthouse itself will be turned off. Sounds kind of unusual, but what's going to happen is that's going to really remind people of what happened that night. And the night the Fitzgerald sank, that light was not operating. There was a power failure up here, and the whole area where Whitefish Point is today and where our parking lot is, where people come in for the museum, that whole area was flooded the night the Fitzgerald sank, and the light was out. And the Coast Guard has agreed to turn the light off for a couple of minutes for people to kind of think about it and think maybe what it would have been like out there on the lake and at Whitefish Point the night the Fitz sank. So that's going to be a little bit unusual.
I guess I had never realized that the light was out. And, we're talking before GPS was really commonly available. I don't know what radar, was available then. In 75, it would have been certainly really good. So it's still interesting to note that light was out that night. Wow.
It was. And a lot of times people visiting the museum, it is amazing to me how many people come up to the museum specifically for the Fitzgerald exhibit, and it's the number one thing. So we talk about it a lot. And I think at times people try to really, they want to know about that and maybe how that lighthouse not operating had an effect. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that ship was 17 miles away. Snow, wind, rain, everything else. They would not have been able to see that light anyways.
True.
But you never know. But yeah.
Wow. Well, of course, you're not open this time of the year. Normally, you close down at the end of October each year. Correct. But you are going to be open for a bit of the time on Saturday the 10th.
That's correct, Dave. We're going to be open from 10 to 4, and people are welcome to come through the museum. The main thing that will be open that day will be the main museum gallery. So the lighthouse keeper's quarters and the boathouse and the theater, things like that will not be open. But the main gallery, and it's going to be by donation. So people are welcome to come through, and we'll be there talking about the Fitzgerald and answering questions. People are certainly welcome to join us.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Good luck with the Edmund Fitzgerald Memorial Ceremony coming up Saturday the 10th, 7 p.m. up at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. If you'd like more information about the museum or about the event itself, go to shipwreckmuseum.com, and Bruce Lynn and all the good folks up there at the Shipwreck Museum will fill you in at shipwreckmuseum.com. Of course, we have lots of great events happening all around the state. Michelle, why don't you tell us about some of them?
One of my favorites, the Grand Rapids International Wine and Food Festival, is coming up November 8th through the 10th, and this is just a fantastic way to try all sorts of wines, beers, food. It is so much fun. I try to go every year. For folks with kids or young at heart, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey's Circus is coming to the Palace of Auburn Hills on November 7th through November 11th. They've got never-before-seen performances. It's going to be a fully charged circus. I don't know what that means, but it sounds exciting. Of course, with the Christmas season coming, you don't want to miss Bronner's Christmas Wonderland, and they're going to have a special Michigan glassblower signing with Kim and Dave Mull November 9th through 11th, so make sure to check that out and get some signature on some blown glass. Lexington Holiday Market Open House Weekend, November 9th through 11th, with the village and shops decorated for the holidays. And Blissfield Yuletide, A Season of Bliss, is happening November 9th through the 11th. It's a weekend filled with holiday shopping, craft shows, train ride, And of course, Santa's starting to make his appearances all over the state. Riverside Saginaw Film Festival is happening November 8th through 11th in Saginaw. This 4 days, 27 independent foreign documentary and short films will play on 6 screens at 4 venues. So there is a lot going on, as always, and all of these are available at michigan.org. As well as a lot of other events happening across the state.
Absolutely. I love big events. I just like where people all come together. It's a communal thing. I don't know what it is, but really like them. And I especially like parades. And we're going to find out all about the details behind America's Thanksgiving Parade coming up next right here on Travel Michigan, where your trip begins at michigan.org.